Okay, session 5, marriage is bliss. Okay, we've got in front of you a little handout, and the handout is all about how to have a good fight. Okay, it's normal for couples to in their marriage to have disagreements, you know, and difference of opinion. In fact, it's normal by all human beings if they've got a mind in their thinking and they're using it, that they're going to sometimes have different opinions, and that's absolutely fine. There's a mistake, or there's a perception in society that if people are going to argue, then that has to be a bad thing. And if they're going to argue, then there's going to be animosity and it's going to cause harm and pain and grief, and it has to be always negative. And it's not really the case. Because most of life, in fact, even in the Torah, if you look at the halachot, the laws, in Shulchan Aruch, if you come to the section of Choshen Mishpat, which is all about disputes in business, it's much, much thicker and bigger. There's much more Gemaras and halakha about disputes and disagreements, and that's a major part of our living life in this world, that we're going to have disagreements and disputes, and everyone's going to think they're right, and you've got to find a way of reconciling one with the other and compromise, etc. And that's what the main job of the Bet Din is, right? Ben Din le Din, Ben Mishpat le Mishpat. And therefore, in a couple's marriage, if they are allowed to express themselves, then they're going to have disagreements. I mean, if you go back to the 1940s and you see, you know, how the adverts were and how people communicated, like in America, you'll see that there's a man talking to another man and woman sitting at the table and she's not allowed to speak. She can't just speak when she feels like it. It was unheard of, right? And then suddenly they'll turn around to her and say, yes, would you like to say, yeah, would anybody like a cup of tea? Right? And then she goes spend half an hour just boiling the water and getting the tea, and then coming and serving you with some cookies. Oh, I made some nice cookies to go with the tea. You know, so women had a certain place and they weren't allowed to express themselves, and we don't live like that anymore, and it wasn't necessarily the right way in the first place. So the other argument is that by learning to argue the right way, when I say argue, it's a harsh word that doesn't have to be used in order to mean something negative, but let's talk about expressing our opinions. Yeah, if we have a dialogue, two people communicating, and one thinks one and the other thinks something else, there's nothing wrong with that. But when there is disagreements, if we know how to use them, then it's actually good for our children to see how to problem solve. Because quite often, I mean always I should say, children learn from their parents. I think I mentioned it before once, that the BBC did a decade of commissioned a survey to see what's the most effective thing to stop children from becoming alcoholic drunks and, you know, delinquents or whatever, but specifically in drinking, the ladette culture. And they tried every type of conditioning and message and campaigns and all, and they found that the most effective thing from everything, that there's a section in the community, in the population, whereby their parents saying to their children, look, this is not our way. We don't do that. The other communities, in our place, we don't do this, right? They found that that was the single most effective thing in conditioning a child in education, to teach them that later on in life they'll go and experiment or whatever, and then they'll say, you know something, actually, my parents didn't come from this kind of culture. We don't do that at home, right? The neighbour might do that, yeah? We'll go to the pub for occasional pint, but we don't affiliate with this, right? That was the most single effective way of educating children not to become drunks for the rest of their alcoholics. So that means education works by saying something and saying it again and again and again, and we tell our children again and again and again, we think they don't pay attention. But eventually they hear it so many times, they will actually pay attention. Okay? That works well with children, but with husbands, it's not good for wives to nag all the time. I'm joking. We'll speak about that. We actually spoke about that, yeah? But we'll talk about it again when we recap. So here we have the rules of fighting. It says good fight equals becoming closer after and through the fight. I mean, if two people are arguing and they're angry, what's the point? They're only going to start hating things and around them. It's not going to be nice. It's not going to be very effective in any positive sense. There's going to be no respect and there'll be no good outcome. Yeah? And on the other hand, if two people have an argument or a fight, and at the end of the fight, they learn to listen to each other and understand where each person's coming from, they could become closer. That's the rule of thumb. How do you know if a fight was a productive discussion or not? And the answer is because did you feel close at the end of it? Okay, we'll explain what that means, you know, to become close. It's very easy to say it, but so okay, you know, I want to be close to my wife. Let's have a fight. You know, we'll get close to each other. I'm not saying that, but there's a need. There's a story of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Allah Shalom, when he passed away. He said that in his wife's funeral that they said that they never ever had a fight. We mentioned this before. So he never even had to ask her for forgiveness because they never had any disputes. That is abnormal. It's very special. It's very unique. Yeah, super religious, or the expectation of that is not our usual expectation. And therefore, we should expect, and even say it's normal for a husband and wife to have differing views. And when they have chilukei de'ot, they have different views. So we're going to talk about how the best way, so you might have a different way, but I mean, I doubt it, because, you know, we put a lot of time and effort to try and find how to teach ourselves that there is a right way to argue and there's a wrong way to argue. Okay, we can argue about that. Okay, but at the end of the day, most people don't have these skills. We don't learn them in schools, right? So we have to spend time to try and acquire them. So here we have it, the rules of fighting. Okay. The one thing that whenever it comes in, then getting closer through an argument or a discussion goes out, is anger. Yeah, once anger comes into anything, any kind of discussion, there's no discussion anymore. Right? So we say to ourselves, we recognize that anger, you can't have a conversation where one or both parties are angry. It's a complete waste of time. You can't achieve anything. Okay, just try to imagine for a second. Husband saying, I don't want to go to your mother-in-law, right, to my mother-in-law, right, for Shabbat, right? Or even to go on a holiday to another country to visit her. Right? I'm nothing against her, but I'm not doing it right now on a holiday. Okay? I want Shabbat off. I've had a hard week. I don't know what even. Example. And the wife says, but we have to. It's my auntie's birthday, and she's coming over there especially, and they're expecting us, and everyone's going to be there except for us. You're going to let the family down. I'm going to look silly. It's too much. I can't deal with it. You know, you always do this to me. We made plans. You're breaking the plans, and arguing, right? Now, as long as they're not angry, they're talking. The second somebody's angry, so what happens is this. Look, you have to do it because I'm going to be really upset. And last time you did this to me, right? So she's getting more angry. And he's like, look, I'm putting my foot down this time because I always give in. And then I end up regretting it. And I don't want to regret it again anymore. So he'll raise his voice, right? At that point, what are they actually thinking? If there's any rational thinking, they might be thinking, well, if I say it a bit harsher and stronger, then she'll realize I really mean business and she'll come down and accept it, right? So, chas v'shalom, you know, with that attitude, a person could end up, you know, using violence and domestic violence and use that and rage, and well, that's no good. It's not going to lead to anything. We're only escalating the situation where the risk is getting stronger and the control is getting less, and it's certainly not going to achieve anything, right? Unless he's going to scare her or she's going to scare him or put fear in each other. And that's certainly not the answer that we're looking for. When anger comes in, discussion goes out the window. So let's say that is usually what happens. So how do we stop that? How do we stop anger from creeping in? So the first thing is to recognize that we can't have a discussion when there's anger. It's a complete waste of time. What's the point? Can anybody in the audience tell me how it could be possible to argue a point and have a discussion if somebody's angry? It's just not going to happen. We don't have the self-control to say, okay, so what's the alternative? Just stop talking. She'll get even more angry, or he'll get even more angry. So, okay, I'm sorry, I'm not talking to you. You're angry. There's no point. When you cool down, I'll talk to you. Go in the corner to cool down and come back. I'm not angry. You're angry. Me? Look at you. Am I raising my voice? How many times have we seen that? Okay. There's no point talking about somebody being angry in front of them, because they'll never accept that they're angry, and if they do, then that means they're not angry, and if they're not angry, then you can talk to them anyway. So a person who's angry has no control over themselves. It's not possible to have a discussion. So therefore, what should we do? I'm asking you, what should we do? What would you suggest that you do? If somebody's angry, you want to have a discussion. It's really important, because there's only one day left So you have to make the conclusion of whatever the outcome is going to be. So there's no more time to waste. You have to get an answer tonight. Somebody's angry. What do? Carry on talking for the sake of it because there's nothing else to do, or stop talking? What should we do? Huh?
Calm down.
Try and resolve the situation.
How? Let's say she's angry, not you, right? Let's say you're angry, not her. And we haven't got, they're both, no, I'm not giving in, no, I'm not giving in. So now what are we going to do?
Gotta calm down first.
Got to calm down first. There is no other way. There is no other way, right? So what's the quickest route to calming down? If you say to the other person, calm down, will they calm down? No one calm down. So how do we do it? Okay, so let's take ourselves out of our own personal situation for a second. Let's say you're in a shop and you see a mother and a child. And the child's like, I want that chocolate. And the mother says, no, you're not getting it. I want that chocolate. No, I'm not getting it. I'm having that chocolate. No, no. He goes and he grabs the chocolate. I told you you can't have it. Nah, chocolate, chocolate, chocolate. Gets on the floor, starts spinning around on the floor. Chocolate, chocolate. Right? So what would you do? If you're standing there, if you're the parent, I mean, parents sometimes themselves are more angry than the children. Okay? But let's say you're observing, you think to yourself, what should you do in that situation?
Gotta compromise.
What are you going to do? Give the child the chocolate? Not give the child the chocolate?
Distract them.
I think, huh?
Give him an alternative.
Distract them? Distract them? Compromise how? How would the compromise
well, okay,
work?
you know what? You can have this chocolate, but you're not gonna have one for the whole week.
Brilliant, brilliant. But I think that you're using an adult way of dealing with it, which is good if the child will respond, right?
Oh, yeah.
But I
fine.
think as an adult, as a parent, I would say, in the situation that I'm describing, if you got to that point, even if you give the chocolate to the child, he's still worked up. He's worked up to a point where he's already in a frenzy, and it's not anymore about the chocolate. He's just in a state, and we've got to get the child out of that state, right? So if he gets really bad, the shopkeeper will come along just to pick him up and say, take him out the shop, leave him in the streets. Yeah. But I would say, yeah, just to solve it already, I would say, stay on the floor. Okay, I'm going to go and carry on my shopping. Make sure they're safe, obviously. The child is safe. They're not going to do anything wrong. I say, look, if you want to sit on the floor, fine. Okay, but when you calm down, we'll discuss about it. We'll try, and then we'll use Dickler's approach, which is we'll reason whether you want to have your teeth falling out, and because you had 10 chocolates yesterday, we're not having any more today. And I'll be fair with you. Right now, I can't talk to you. Okay, I can't say to you, don't be angry. Oh, you're not going to throw yourself on the floor again? Yes, I am. Right? So you say, okay, you can do that if you want to do that. I'm going to carry on shopping. When you finish doing what you're doing, come and talk to mummy, daddy, whatever. We'll carry on. We'll carry on from there. So what will the child do? Think, oh, what's the point of being on the floor? They'll scream and cry a bit more, get it out their system, as a child needs to. They'll get it out their system. I think, okay, now what? What's my next move? Is mummy looking? Is she responding? Is daddy? Is it making any difference to them? You know, there's a child. I've got a book of little kids. They wrote "Dear God," right? What's that lady's name? Nanette Newman. Little kids. They're books. They're called "Dear God," and all these things, funny things that kids write. So one of them, the kid said, "I ran away and went to the park to hide, and nobody came to find me, so I went back home." I ran away from home, but nobody came to see where I was, so I went back home. Like, I was only running away from home because I want to be at home. I'm not running home because I hate home. I just want to be at home, but I want to make a crisis out of it.
I want the attention.
The attention, exactly. Children are very good at knowing where they can push the limits to see what the reaction's going to be. So you leave them alone. Now, the Gemara says that, in the Pirkei Avot, it says that you can't talk to a person when they're angry. You can't appease a person in their angry state. When they calm down, then you can appease them. You can reason with them and say, look, let's look at this differently. Let's make a compromise. Let's find a way out. There's a solution. Let's talk about it. Right? But when the moment that there's anger there, at that moment, nothing can be done whatsoever. So for adults to now be in that situation, one way of dealing with it is to say to the other one, look, I'm ready to talk about this when you're ready to talk about it. You know, I'm here. Come to me whenever you want to discuss it. But no screaming, shouting, or whatever. With the least offensive remarks. Right? Anything condescending, anything patronising, anything. You know, when you stop being angry and shouting, then come to me because I'm perfect. I'm the perfect controlled person. You know, I've got control of myself. You are a little child on the floor spinning round, but I'm 100% in control. So when you become like me, an adult, I'll be here waiting for you in my office. You can knock on the door and I'll tell you when to come in and send me a postcard, right? They're not going to accept it that way. But effectively, that is what I want to achieve. I just need to achieve it without offending the person, because the second I offend them, they're not going to listen anymore. So I have to say, look, you know something, I love you and we don't need to be arguing, and I can see that you're upset. I'm also upset, yeah? And I don't want to get more upset, and I don't want you to get more upset. So whenever we take a chill, we'll go around, have a cup of tea, something, and come back, take a deep breath, and we'll discuss it properly. Yeah, right. Not when you calm down in half an hour, and I'll be wasting all my time waiting for you. Then you can come and talk to me, right? Anything negative is going to set them off more, right? So the thing is, like, you're angry. I understand you're angry because I'm also angry, and I'm going to try and control myself, and you should try and control yourself. And we don't want to be angry. And when the anger goes away, we're going to sit down and talk. And I'm over here waiting for you. I'm going to be waiting whenever we're ready to talk. I'm ready to talk as well. Okay, it might not be that day. Okay, but that's the idea. I spent a lot of time on this point because this point is the basics of all the other things that we're going to speak about. That when two people are really willing to talk to each other and find a solution, then it's possible to do that. But if they're not wanting to do that, they can't even begin, doesn't start. Okay, what do you do if you're angry? What if I personally am angry and I've got an anger problem? The Mishnah Pirkei describes all different types of angers that people have. Some are quick to anger and quick to forget about it. Some people are slow to anger and they never forget about it. That's the worst. Yeah. Some people the other way. Everybody has different issues of anger. The Rambam describes how anger takes over a person's life. They don't have a life because somebody can press a button and wind them up and they set off. And anger is considered in many ways the worst of the negative character traits, because a person who's angry is not a person. He's not there. Yeah. So therefore, anger management, anger therapy is a very important level in self-control in life. Very, very important.
Anger is compared to avodah zarah.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's many explanations why. I can scare you and tell you some really horrible things about what happens when a person gets angry to their soul. But I don't want to do that because you'll have nightmares. Okay. The Kabbalah describes horrible things that happen to the soul. But we're all good people and we all want to try and conquer our anger. So we should have an agenda in our lives to make sure that we work on our anger, because it's part of being in the world to try and perfect ourselves. Okay? So there's books written about anger and anger management, anger therapy. I counsel people in anger, right? But there's one or two particular things which I say three things I'm going to tell you which are very effective. Okay? Very effective. There's a book by Rabbi Pliskin. I don't know about the whole book, but there's one section in it which I've liked very much, and that's got 50 different things you can do if you're angry. The book is just called Anger, all right? And it's not everyone's style. It's very effective for many people. I can recommend it as a book, but I know some people will be looking for something a bit more than that. There are many books in the market about this, but there's a rabbi who wrote a book. But in one section it says 50 things to do if you're angry. And I think these three are mentioned there, or maybe another book which did something similar. And one of them is to stand in front of a mirror. The person stands in front of a mirror when they're angry, right? They will stop being angry because they look so stupid and so silly, so pathetic. One of my children once was very, very angry, so I lifted him up and put him in front of a mirror, and he couldn't bear to see himself stop being angry. He said, I didn't want to look like that. Except, of course, if he can't help himself and you're making him feel bad about himself, so then that's another point which has to be worked on. Mustn't feel bad. You've got to learn to have self-control. But if a person will look at themselves in the mirror when they're angry, they might burst out laughing because it just looks so funny. Looks like a monkey going crazy over a banana, right, or a gorilla or something. It doesn't look human. The anger, the rage, is that really me? I don't want that. If I want to have a portrait in my house, a self-portrait, you get some artist and say, can you paint me? I'm going to put it on the big, winding staircase. Look, I have a person angry. You imagine what you look like. So that's one thing. Another thing is if you can't get yourself in front of a mirror, there's no mirror, try and imagine what you look like. Or having looked at yourself in the mirror, just try and imagine what do I look like. Try and imagine right now, how do I want myself to be seen by other people? Is that how I want to be seen? Right? I look ridiculous. Another thing is to put water in your mouth for 20 seconds and hold it there. Yeah, I think somebody, a wise man once said that the most important thing you have to learn in marriage, for men especially, is how to bite your tongue. Right? Because patience and holding back is quite often a very effective tool. Because so many times, more often than not, a person will say something and regret it. I wish I never said that thing. It made such a difference. Especially from men to women. Right? The Gemara says that, it's very interesting. On one hand, it says that a man, from the Torah, if a man is alone with two women, it's not allowed. Okay? But if a woman is alone with if a man is alone with two men, from the Torah, technically it's allowed, but we're worried that one of them might fall asleep or go to be excused, so you have to have more than that. There's two men and two women, and some say even three. Without going into the details, right? But you see that the Gemara recognizes that a man with two women is worse than a woman with two men. So it says, why? Why is that so? Because it says, Nashim datot kalot alehem, which means a woman can be seduced more easily. Right? That means if the man, God forbid, is not talking about people who want to do sins, people who don't want to do sins, right? But the Yetzirah comes along and tests them. So the man Kiddushin says, so one man might convince another woman, you pretend you're not here and don't look, and I'm going to sin with this woman, and it's easier for him to get two women to agree to do that, says Rashi, than if you've got two men in the room, and the man says to the other man, look, I'm going to do it. She's like, hang on a minute, what's all this macho business between them? It's not so easy to convince a man as it is to seduce a woman. That's why the Gemara holds with that. Okay? On the other hand, it says in the Gemara, the differences in Nidah, it says the difference between a man and a woman. It's got a list of things, gender differences, right? Generalizations about men and women. And one of them it says, why does a woman have a melodious voice, a harmonious voice? Ki kolech HARAV u'marech naveh. Right? What does kol HARAV mean? A melodious voice, when it resonates, yeah? And a man doesn't, he has a fickle voice. So it says, because each one from where they came from. He came from the ground, and if you hit the ground, you don't get a very nice sound, right? Doesn't get a good ring to it. She comes from him, who's his bone. His bone, if you knock a bone, there's a bit of a sound to it. That's what the Gemara describes, the difference between a man and a woman, right? So you see from there that a man and a woman are different, yeah? And it goes on to say, why is it's easier to appease a man than to appease a woman? It says, you can get around him more easily than you get around her. So it says, Makom Shenivru, from where they come from. He comes from the ground. The ground is soft, so you can get around him. She comes from bone. Bone is hard. You can't get it. So you see two Gemaras with two complete opposing ideas, right? How can it be? Which one is right? Which one is right? One hand says you can get around the woman more easily. The other one says you can get around the man more easily. He's softer, right? How can you reconcile these two ideas? Okay? So I'm going to suggest the following. Until now, no one has disagreed with me. So let's see what you think, okay? And my rule of thumb is like this. Before a woman makes up her mind about anything, it's much more easier to convince her. Right? Once she made up her mind, there's no changing it. You understand? Once she's decided, there's a wall. You're never going to get past that wall. You're on the other side of the wall. Total resistance, right? And we have to understand that's how she is, okay? If this is true, okay? So anyone disagree? Anyone experienced that before? Right? So, for example, let's say a man really wants to do something, right? And he knows that his wife might not want to do it. Or if she'll say no, then it's no forever. He's never going to get around it, right? So the worst thing to do is to say, I want to do this. What do you want to do? So there's me and there's you. I want this. So you want that. Who says I want it? Maybe I don't, maybe I do, maybe I don't. Right? But now you're making me think that you want it. You already put pressure on me, so I have to either agree with you or that's it. And that's pressure on me. Right? So there's an immediate resistance not to want to do it because you've already stated your position and she maybe hasn't made her mind up yet. And now there's a pressure on her to have to give in and go along with you. Yeah? But if you say to her, look, you know something, I've got this idea, but I'm not sure if I want to do it, right? But I'm thinking about doing it. What do you think? And she said, oh, I also thought about it, but also I'm not sure. You're not sure. I'm not sure. We're exactly in the same place. Let's together, you know, see if we want to do that thing and try it out and see how it goes, right? It's not you and me. It's us together, right? Because she hasn't yet made up her mind, yeah? So I'm saying this point, we could talk about it for long, but this is more again back to the communication. The point is that if a woman is under pressure, you're putting her in her worst situation of resisting, making conflict for nothing. That's the point. Yeah. Now let's say you decided that you're going to say something to her, and she said to you something like, I don't know, something personal, and you said to her, no. No. Right? No? You say no? What do you mean no? What if I did for you this and that, and it goes on and on and on. And after a while you think to yourself, why was I so honest in saying no? If I wouldn't have said no, right, none of this would happen. I'm silly for saying those two letters, N-O, and I really regret it now. Right? I know a lot of married people will tell you that it could be the other way around as well. That just that one extra word made such a difference. If I only would have kept my mouth shut. Right? Because now I made a position and there's two sides and there's conflict. It's not worth it. In fact, the Gemara says that Rabbi Yossi Aglili was on his way to a place called Lod. You all heard of Lod, yeah? And Beruria, the wife of Rabbi Meir, was standing in the road. And he said to her, Ezehu derech lelod, which is the right road to Lod? So she said to him, she says, Al tapesicha ma'isha, you're not allowed to speak to women too much, right? And the Gemara says, even with your own wife, how much more to somebody else's wife? So he said, hang on a minute. I asked, Ezehu derech lelod. I used 3 words. Which one was extra? She said, you should have said, Ezehu lelod, which is the one to Lod, without the word derech, the road, is extra. So she's telling him off for speaking too much to women because he said an extra word. Right? So I was once, before I got married, I went to speak to a counsellor in a girls, he's a rabbi who works in a girls' seminary. I said, I want to get married, I want to learn about the right way and the wrong way. Can you give me some tips? And I went to his house to speak to, and he was giving me examples of marriages that aren't exactly going off the right way. And he said, for example, somebody came to see him, and he was surprised that he was talking to his wife. He said, you're a rabbi, how can you get time to speak to your wife? So he said, how can you get married and not speak to your wife? Are you crazy? Yeah, I mentioned last time there's a book by Rabbi Aaron Feldman and the river, the kettle and the bird. And then there's a story about a man and a wife were having problems. They went to see the rabbi, and the rabbi said, do you spend time together? And he said, of course. So he said, how do you spend time? He said, well, every day I come home from the kollel, where I'm learning Torah all day long, and my wife makes me a nice cup of tea, and I sit down, and then we learn together. He says, really, what do you learn? He says, we learn Mesilat Yesharim, the path of the just, and we work on our traits, our character traits. He says, well, tell me, how does a typical session? He says, well, I come home, I sit down, she makes me my cup of tea, and then she tells me all the things she did wrong that day, and I tell her all the things she has to do to correct it. It's not conversation. Marriage has to have conversation. Now, in terms of marriage having conversation, it's very interesting, because, oh, Chaba, you're early.
Yeah, very early.
We've got seats.
Yeah, I see one.
Yeah. Bit of chair from there, thank you. So on the one hand, this is suggesting that you shouldn't speak to women too much. Yeah. On the other hand, I'll tell you an interesting, very important law, halakha. You all have heard the law of shomer negia. A man's not allowed to touch another woman when it's not appropriate. Could be his wife at certain times of the month. Could be somebody else's wife. It could be a non-married woman. Okay. So shomer negia, according to the Rambam, is from the Torah. But where do we learn it from? When in the Torah does it say you're not allowed to touch a woman? Okay, and then you have to ask yourself, does it extend to shaking hands? Because in this country, many rabbis met the queen, they shook her hand. Yeah, because it's the question if it applies to a greeting, if it's only done in an intimate way or not. Okay, so now the Gemara, the Rambam quotes this. It's called a Sifri, the book which explains the old Torah from the verses. And in the verse it says, "V'isha b'tumat nidada lo tikareh." When a woman is in her state when you're not supposed to touch her, right, because she's bleeding. So it says you mustn't come close. That's the word. You must lo tikareh. Don't come close. So the Sifri says it's an interesting word. Why did it say you mustn't be together physically, mustn't have relations, right? Or something obvious which is forbidden from the Torah. Or saying, be more specific about what you mean. But what is this word, don't come close? So the Sifri says there's 3 things that you have to know. Yachol, you may have thought, Yechabekena, that, look, it's true you can't have relations, but Yechabekena, maybe you can hug her, she's feeling down. Shekena, maybe you can kiss her. And you can talk to her, whisper sweet nothings, right? Talmud Lomar, the Torah comes to tell you, you can't even come close. Not only the marital relations are not allowed at that time, but other things that make you closer to being, losing your control, that you end up doing those things. And specifically 3 things are mentioned in other words, that's what the Torah is teaching us. That the Rambam learns from, and the Shulchan Aruch is the law, that from the Torah, you can't even do something that will lead you to something like relations, right? So there's 2 things which are forbidden. Relations is really bad because it's a karet, it's like, a very bad sin. And even just touching is just it's a love, which means like it's forbidden, the minimum amount. So what does that mean? That means physical contact in a way like a hug or a kiss, it specifically mentions, it's forbidden from the Torah. But the last one's a really interesting one. It says, V'daber ima dvarim betelim. Dvarim betelim means nothingness, right? Sweet nothings, literally. A lot of the things we say in society actually come from the words of the Gemara and from the Torah. And here, the rabbis use the word dvarim betelim, which means sweet nothings. Okay? So can you imagine Moshe Rabbeinu is with his wife. He says, roses are red, violets are blue. Oh, Sippy, I love you, how much I do. Can you imagine Moshe Rabbeinu doing that? Right? Because that's what the Torah is telling us. You may have thought that when she's in Niddah, you're allowed to do that, right? Right? And you got your own sweet secret talk, your lovey-dovey talk, your own innuendo, right? Talmud Lomar, no. This time of the month you've got to be extra careful because it will lead to something, you lose control. But normally it's okay. So you see from that, normally it's okay. Normally it's the right thing to do. It's only then that it's a problem because it's going to lead to something which you can't, you're going to come to a dead end to what you're supposed to do. And it's only those things. It didn't say you're not allowed to play Scrabble. It didn't say you can't chat. It didn't say you can't, play word games or other games or things which you like doing together which doesn't involve physical contact or anything which flirty. It's all okay. In fact, you need to do it at that time. The Gemara, I don't expect to talk about this too much, but the Gemara says that the rabbis of the generation, the time of Rabbi Akiva, wanted to make it forbidden for a woman to wear makeup when she's in that time of month. Yeah? And Rabbi Akiva came along and he said, it's enough that they have to go through so much. Why make it so difficult? They're feeling low at that time. Let them dress up nicely and wear nice makeup and wear nice dresses for their husbands. Let them feel better about themselves. And that's why the Gemara describes it. When Rabbi Akiva came back with his 24,000 students, there was a woman all dressed up for her husband because she hadn't seen him for so many years. And the student said to her, can you move away? The holy rabbi's coming. And he said, no, you're missing the point. He said, without her, I wouldn't be here and you wouldn't be here. He says, it was his wife, the one who sent him away to go and learn. So it's very important to recognize that it's good to converse with your wife, okay? It's very, very good to converse with your wife. Even if you don't speak about anything, whisper sweet nothings, right? It's essential for the relationship. In fact, sometimes it's even a mitzvah, but we're not going to go into that area right now, maybe next time. In fact, it's part of the mitzvah of becoming close together. It's even required as a duty, okay? In order to make it a more pleasurable time when you spend together. Without words, can you imagine how boring it would be? Right? So it says, therefore, how can it be that Beruya turned around to Rabbi Bliss and said to him that you said one extra word, and that's such a terrible thing. So that's why I like to say, what the rabbis are teaching us is, to talk to your wife is fantastic, but one extra word, just the one extra word at the wrong time, and you're going to wish you never said it. Just a no or a yes, yeah? You have to bite your lip, right? That's the skill. Okay, that's the introduction for today. So what are we saying? Venting is okay, discussion is okay. Once there's anger, there's no point.
So what happens when, Rabbi, when she wants to go to her parents, he doesn't? When we come back to how?
We're only beginning, right? We've got the last half of it. We haven't even begun. All we've explained so far, right, with great depth, hopefully, or with significant depth, is that once there's anger, there's no point talking. That's the child spinning around on the floor. So leave him on the floor and say, look, you know what? I'm going to keep an eye on you so nothing happens to you. Don't worry, I'm not abandoning you. When you're ready to stop spinning on the floor, we'll discuss it. But you can't say it in a condescending way. You can't say anything that's going to offend them more because then they're not going to calm down. right? It has to be, I'm a bit upset, you're a bit upset, we love each other, we're going to get past this. So you know what? When we both calm down, we'll have a discussion about it. I'm ready and waiting, you know, when you are. Okay? Okay, so moving on. Now, when we want to, maybe, let's take away this example of there's a discrepancy of what we should do, go, not go, like we said before. Let's take another example. I am upset. I'm really upset. I come home and I can't believe what's happened. I'm so upset because they've gone and done it again, right? I said not to do it and they've done it. I can't believe it. You know, my favorite talit, which I take to shul, right? Instead of putting it in the dry cleaners, they went and washed it and they ruined it. And I told them not to do it because the last time now I have to go all the way and buy a new one. I haven't got one. I'm the rabbi. I'm going to the shul and I'm going to have to wear a smutty looking talit, and I'm really upset about it. Right? I told my wife not to do that. You know, and they're going to tell me it wasn't her and it was a child. Okay? I just made that by the way. It never really happened. Okay? Now, I might need to vent. How should I do it? How should I do it? I want to get my point across, right? I told you this before, and you did it again, and you don't listen to me. I need you to know if I'm going to be married to you, and I want to be close to you, and you're going to have to be more familiar with me than anyone in the whole world. I don't care about the lady next door or the man next door or anything like that. I only want my wife to be close to me, right? Now, if you're not close to me, that means I married the wrong person, okay? So I have to express my opinion, because otherwise we're never going to be happy, because I'm always going to be just accepting it. And that's also not good, because I've given up. And giving up doesn't create future. So what do I do? So the answer, first of all, is that venting is okay. Letting off steam and cooling down is okay. Sometimes a person needs to come in and say, I've had enough. It's, you know, how can this happen again? Bang, bang. You know, right? Okay. The Gemara specific says that breaking something in anger is like doing avodah zarah, and a person has to fast. It's like worshipping the devil and the evil side. It's not a good thing to do, to break something. Right? So no breaking doors and throwing things. You're not like the Greeks when you go at the end of the meal, they smash all the plates in the fire. Right? We're not talking about that. But just, you know, I can't believe this. You know? Person needs to get pressure out, and many times psychologists say that's good. It's not a Torah way, by the way. Person shouldn't need to show any kind of signs of anger if they work on themselves. There's absolutely it doesn't do anything to go like that. What does it do? It just meant that next time I'm going to do it harder. I'm going to do the same thing again. I haven't learned not to get angry. It's better to have preventative anger, not get angry in the first place. Okay, but that is not the end of the world. If that's going to allow a person to say, right, now we can talk. I did that, now we can talk, right? So we can accept it. But venting is okay. Right? But venting means to get out my anger is okay. But being angry all the time, that's absolutely unacceptable. Never allowed to do that. Now, therefore, we've got these rules that we're going to go through now. That these rules have been worked out in such a way that a person can communicate with the other person without setting them off to get angry, and trying to minimize all the time that where emotions will come in and stop the actual reason of the argument being able to be heard by the two people. Yeah? Whereas there's certain things that if we use those things, then it's very hard to then concentrate on what's being discussed, because a person gets angry about other things, sets them off, they go for a tangent. And I know that these things in my own life, I took them for granted, and I was wrong, because it didn't bother me, but they bothered my wife, and it's the other way around. Yeah. So therefore, I can tell you firsthand that they really do make a difference. And we're going to go through them. But before we do that, I want to mention two things. Number one is there's certain things that are worse in general for women to hear from men than if men heard it from women. There's certain things that if you say it to a woman, you must never do that. It's unacceptable to ever say it. Right? But if the same thing we said to a man, he should just accept it. Okay, so you'll tell me that's not fair, and I'll tell you, no, it's not fair, but that's how God made us, right? The first one is to say to a woman, I hate you. If you ever say to a woman, I hate you, right, what's she going to think? That you hate her. That's what she's going to think, that you hate her. And if you tell her, I didn't mean it, and I didn't this, and I didn't that, and the other, she said, once you said it, it's always a possibility that you really meant it. Right? And, okay, even if it's already happened, okay, that was bad enough. But But every time this is said to a woman, I hate you, right, she has tremendous pain from it. Because at that moment, she feels that it's true. Good example, we said before, men and women are different. How different? Very different. Why? Because women are relationship beings, right? What makes them into a relationship being? We said they're more emotionally attached to what's going on. So when they communicate, they use lots of words, because the more words, the more bonding, the more expressing what I'm feeling, and the more words means more communication, more being together, right? Feeling each other. We use lots and lots of words in many roundabout ways. Okay? We explained that already. So therefore, when we're speaking to a woman, she's feeling what is being expressed. And and saying I hate you will make her feel that he hates me. And if she feels that he hates me, that's going to make her have a lot of pain. Yeah? And that pain will then be remembered, and it will cause a damage that she'll have to live with for the rest of the relationship. That he said 20 years ago when we were first met, and he said that he hates me, and I can never forget it. I can never get it out of my head. I went to hypnotherapist, you know. I said he loved me. He said he loves me 10 million times just to make up for that one time, and it's still there. Now, if a woman says to a man, "I hate you," okay, so he says,
It goes from one side to another.
you might feel bad. I would feel horrible if my wife said that to me. I'd feel really bad she said it to me. You know, I wouldn't forget it so easily. Even if I didn't say anything, I wouldn't forget it so easily. I'd remember it. Yeah, because it came out, because it hurt me, not because I want to get her back or something, just because I'll be devastated if she said that to me. Okay? But the bottom line is, even if she did say it to me, I know that's what she was feeling at that second. Right? 10 seconds later, she could be feeling something completely different. Because she's a woman and she has feelings, and she's a relationship being. So I know that what she was telling me at that second was what she was feeling, and she really felt that at that second. So she felt it that second because I'm an idiot for what I did. So I made her feel that she hates me. Right? I haven't got a problem with that, because I totally understand why she would say that at that time, and why 10 seconds later is totally irrelevant. You understand? Nothing wrong with her. She's just a normal woman, okay? And I understand that, right? But the other way around, it doesn't. It's not a balanced playing field. It doesn't work the same way. Yeah, because do you see what I'm saying? And if anyone wants to disagree, you're welcome to disagree. But I think it's got a lot of truth in it, and therefore a man must never say that. And assembly, we'll see there's other things he must never say for the same reason, okay? Because she'll believe it and remember it forever. Now the other way around. No, it's actually still not really fair to the man, but that's how it is. Another point that's really not fair to the man. It's an obvious one, but it's a very important one. Okay, whenever there's discussion or argument or conversation, we have to remember the only thing that counts is the perception, not the intention. Right? Because you think about many arguments that we've experienced in our lives, right? What happens after the argument when you're trying to patch it up? Well, I didn't really mean that, but you said it. No, but I said it in a certain way. You understood it that way, but if I would have said it a different way, it could mean something else. I said, no, but you said it. Okay, but I know what I meant because I was the one that said it. How can you tell me what I meant when I said it? I'm telling you what I really meant. Yeah, but it didn't sound like that. I don't believe you. Anybody recognize that? Right? So before saying it, a man has to realize, I'm saying it more that way, but it's true both ways. You know, before I'm about to say something, right? Am I sure that she's going to perceive what I really mean? Because if she's not, you know what's going to happen. Well, okay, you can turn around and say I didn't mean it, and maybe use that as a strategy of getting out of it, right? It might be worth the gamble. It's not worth the gamble. You're going to have hours of discussion to get out of this mess. You're creating such a massive mess. You're an idiot. Why did you want to get yourself in such a pickle? Right? She's going to say, but last time you did the same thing. If you didn't do it last time, I'd say, okay, you know what, one time? Okay, so he made a mistake. But the same thing again. You know that hurts me. You used that word. You said it the same way. Yeah, I'm not looking at anyone in particular. I don't know what goes on. We all have our own homes and our own baggage to carry. You might think I'm looking at someone in particular. But the bottom line is that the perception is more important than the intention when we're discussing arguments and discussions. Okay, the first rule. The first rule I always, when I start this rule, more recently especially, because I've realised this, is that I feel a cheat when I do this rule. Because it says there, 5 compliments for every criticism. Who can do that? Can you imagine doing that?
My husband does it.
He must be a superstar. My superstar. I mean, I'm trying to imagine. I want to tell my wife something that I'm not happy about. So I say, you know, my darling, you're fantastic. You are just, I'm so lucky to marry you. You know, you look after me. You've got such lovely midot. You're so generous. And I come up with 5 wonderful compliments, right? You always bring the best out in everything. Say, right, the visa bill. How can you spend so much money? So, first of all, the impact's gone. I mean, that means you didn't mean the 5 things that you said. You didn't really mean them. You just wanted to talk about the negative thing, right? So what's the point of saying them, right? Number one is, if I'm so upset that I want to have an argument, how can you come up with 5 compliments, right? And how are you going to say them and really mean them? It's just the whole thing seems like a game for kids, right? So why put it in? So I'm going to tell you something. Now we often, from time to time I should say, around the Shabbat table, I'll say to the kids, right, we want to hear from compliments. You're not allowed to say anything negative. I only want to hear compliments, especially in life coaching. If you go for a 24-hour period, try this tomorrow, right? Go for 24 hours and count how many times we use the word can't, don't, won't, right? The nots, the negatives. Because for every single one of them, the same thing could be said in a positive way. Right? Instead of saying, you don't do this or you can't do that, you could say what you should do is this, right? So what's the difference? The difference is if we create the positive words and we only hear positive things all the time, what will the atmosphere be like? What will the environment be like? Positive, can feel great. If we say negative things all the time, we don't even realise how negative all around us at work, in society, everything. Don't, can't, shan't, how dare you. It's all negative. So what does that create? Negative atmosphere. Everyone is scared to get caught out by the other one, who's looking to what the other one's done wrong to catch them out. Especially if you live in a house with lots of kids, like in this room that you're in right now, kids running around. Each one, you know this, you don't do that to me. Why should you do what, me? What, you? And it goes on, right? So it gets into a negative environment. So who is responsible to make it a positive environment or a negative environment? The parents, right? So the only way that I know that it could ever change is if the parents take responsibility and say, you know what, enough of this, we don't want this negative environment. Everyone's after each other, against each other. And how do you do that? 5 compliments for every criticism. So on the one hand, it's very, very difficult to do. On the other hand, if we don't do that, then we have to take responsibility that we're living in an atmosphere of everyone being negative. Yeah. Now I'll tell you another strategy. You could turn around and say, okay, you know, there's going to be a time where we're going to have a disagreement, we're going to have a discrepancy, right? So when I come into that situation, I'm going to have to say something negative and add it to all the other negative things which are going around in the environment that we're living in, right? So that's terrible. So if maybe I don't have to say 5 criticisms only when I've got something, 5 compliments when I've got a criticism. I should do the 5 compliments all the time, right? And then I create a positive atmosphere, and it's so healthy and balanced that when I do introduce a criticism, it won't be noticed so much. It won't have a bad effect, right? And my wife will be more willing, or husband will be willing to listen to me because we've created a good atmosphere, a healthy atmosphere, much in advance of when we need to discuss something and have the argument. But if they're always having an argument, every day there's another one and another one and another one, I'm just going to feel horrible and I'm not going to listen to the person because we're arguing too much, yeah? So the bottom line is, number one, is this thing of 5 compliments for every criticism. It means, really, that should translate, we are the governors of our own homes. And if we don't create a positive atmosphere, there won't be one, right? And then the arguments will be much worse and very difficult to have arguments. It's very hard to discuss anything.